Hi, this is Mark Sperling from T3Live.com.
观众朋友们，大家好，欢迎收看今天的直击美股，我是主持人张叔，在纽约向您问好。周一美股收高，我们看到今天市场非常有意思，又重新回到2060点的位置。而在最近这段时间，其实市场一直都在我们所关注的2030点到2080点这样的一个位置区间，反弹。但是我们看到上一周五呢，标准普尔500指数是跌破了50日均线。那今天这样一个反弹又重新回到了50日均线以上，而这也是让我们持续关注的一个重要原因。但是另外一方面，今天很有意思是周一开盘就有一系列好消息公布，其中包括了高盛这个曾经的原油大空头突然间跳出来，认为美国的原油市场似乎这个再平衡的状态比他们想象的要快，而这也是推涨今天原油市场的一个重要原因。还有另外一方面呢，我们看到了苹果公司最近是收到了巴菲特旗下的伯克希尔哈撒韦高达981万美元的这样一个投资，这也是提振今天苹果股票上涨高达4%的主要原因。但另外一方面，宏观经济面我们依然看到了一系列喜忧参半的数据，其中在本周末所公布的一系列中国的经济数据，包括像投资以及4月份那个工厂产出，以及包括4月份的零售业数字，其实都没有预期的想象的要好。但是这样的一个情绪似乎没有影响到亚洲市场，甚至是美股市场。好的，更多的消息让我们来看一下今天交易员的独家分析。Hi Mark, your stocks closed 1% higher, supported by the oil gains. And actually, based on what we're seeing in Friday, the S&P X 500 lost its 15-day moving average. So what's the next key level to watch now?
Well, I think we're stuck in this range of 2030 to the 2080 range in the top end of the range, and obviously 2100. Not much has changed. Every time we go down, we sort of bounce and hold that level, and then we come back to that mid to top end of the range, and then we go back down again. At some point, there's going to be some resolution to that range. I don't know when that's going to be. I think we're still in there for a little while.
So do you think this is just the oversold, bounce?
Yeah, I think we're at the point where it's a little bit oversold. The market did get to that level, and we normally get that little bounce. I think today you got propelled through Apple. That really was part of the S&P, the big move, and I think it helped a lot of the other stocks.
Okay, and also for oil, actually that's really a surprise for me because the oil hit the fresh highs, and all of a sudden Goldman Sachs, the long-time bear, just come out and say that okay, this rebalance comes faster than we thought. So how do you think about this rally in oil? Will you trace the trend?
I personally would not trace the trend like now. We obviously just went up a lot. And I think the key is Goldman Sachs in the past has a history of calling the top or the bottom of some of these, and it actually reverses the other way.
Okay.
They've have a pretty good history of it, and so that could happen in this case. I'm not necessarily betting the bank on that, but I think $50 range is the level it should hang at for the time being. Maybe with some downdrafts, and that's quite frankly right where we're at, so we'll have to wait and see.
Okay, and also today is a big day for Apple. It closed almost 4% higher after the Buffett just disclosed 9.81 million stakes in this iPhone maker. And also, Buffett also ups the stakes in IBM. So how do you think about these two companies? Do you think it's a good invest to do right now?
Apple's a new investment, so I think that's interesting. But we got to remember, again, a lot of big hedge fund managers that don't stay in for a lifetime have been out. Buffett looks for opportunities. He's going to be in this probably forever, and if it goes down 20%, he'll probably buy a little bit more. If it goes down 20%, he'll probably buy a little bit more. He doesn't time the market. He just sees value, and it really, more in my opinion, it actually changes it from a growth momentum stock to more of a value stock. That's really where Buffett lives. So I think that's where you have to look at Apple from. Chart-wise, yeah, it could get up to 95, 96 range, but it still needs some time. It still is a beaten-up stock. I still actually think there's probably more downside on it, but I think you got a nice bounce today with the Buffett effect. And then IBM, I really don't think much of it. He always buys it. That's what he does. He tends to buy. He did buy, I think, earlier in the year at a decent level. Up here at this level, maybe you get that continuation at some point later in the year. But overall, I don't think it's as much of a net effect as Apple was today.
Okay, and also we see the gains in Apple seems to spill over to other tech names. For example, Google, like Netflix, they all had a very great day. So how do you think about these two stocks?
Well, I think Google, as I said, we were talking about, I think it might have been Thursday or Wednesday, 720. If it gets down there, I think that's sort of a buy area. It tagged it, and it actually went right back to 730. So I think that's the level you got to keep concentrate on. And we talked about Amazon at the 700 level, and it touched it almost to a T, and it bounced again back to the 710 level. So you really have to get a little bit consistent with your prices and understand the levels, and that's where you have to just step in and sort of hold your nose sometimes, even when it's not working out in your time frame.
Okay, and also you mentioned Baba. Baba is a worth watching stock right now. So why you see some opportunities there?
Well, Baba's had good earnings. I mean, quite frankly, it had good earnings. It really hasn't gone anywhere in a long period of time, even from its IPO. So I do think there's an opportunity. It is a little bit slower stock, so I think you might have to be waiting for it. But it's one of those, I think, that will have some opportunity, and you just got to wait and see.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. That's all we have for today.
Sounds good. Have a good night, everybody.
感谢您的收看，我们明天再见。